We come to urgent question. Kenny Mackaskill.
Ask the Secretary of State if he will make a statement on the levels of self-disconnection from power sources and on government support on energy bills.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I set out to the House on Monday, the Government recognises the importance of protecting customers, including those who are on prepayment meters. And this weekend, the Secretary of State set out a 5-point plan on prepayment meters. He wrote to energy suppliers, calling on them to take every step to support consumers in difficulty, particularly those who are at risk of self-disconnection. And the Government wants to see much greater efforts from suppliers to help consumers in payment difficulties, including offers of additional credit, debt forgiveness or debt advice. As the honourable member will be aware, Ofgem, as the independent regulator, is in the position to direct suppliers in a way that the Government is not. The Government understands that this is a difficult time for many families, and that's why we've put in place unprecedented cost of living support. And it's easy, Mr. Speaker, to take that for granted, but it is so extensive, including the £400 discount under the Energy Bills Support Scheme, which have been appearing on electricity bills since the October bills arrived this winter, as well as the energy price guarantee, not needing any form of application process, directly subsidising energy bills for the typical family this winter to the tune of an additional £900 with equivalent support in Northern Ireland. The Government is also committed to supporting those households without a relationship to a domestic energy supplier with a £400 discount under the Energy Bills Support Scheme alternative funding, with eligible households able to apply from the 27th of February. Now, it's critical that this support reaches consumers. That's why the Government has also urged suppliers to take action on increasing the number of vouchers being redeemed under the Government's Energy Bill Support Scheme, and that's why we've published a list of supplier redemption rates. We want to encourage suppliers to compare themselves with their rivals and look to do as well as the best, showing who's meeting their responsibilities and who needs to do more. There are also established industry rules and processes to reduce the risk of self-disconnection. Suppliers are required to have conversations with their customers in arrears to set up a suitable debt repayment plan, taking account of their ability to pay. It's vital that these rules are followed. The Secretary of State wrote to Ofgem to ensure that they take a robust approach to compliance, and in response, Ofgem is reviewing supplier practice, and a key area of their review is on suppliers' approach to self-disconnection. But this is continuing work, Mr. Speaker. This afternoon I shall be meeting energy suppliers, Ofgem, Energy UK and Citizens Advice to make sure that they hear from the Government and, I can say, for the honourable gentleman and all members of this House, the strong urge from this House to make sure that we do everything we can to protect those during this winter, most of all the most vulnerable.
Kenny Mackaskill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A parliamentary answer on Tuesday disclosed that around 66,000 households in Scotland and 660,000 across Britain had self-disconnected from smart meters in Q3 of last year. Self-disconnection is that euphemism for being simply unable to afford to heat or power your home. Yeah. It's as pernicious as the phrase collateral damage is in war. Yeah. These afflicted by self-disconnection and all its misery are also civilians, but we are at peace, not war. These figures are for a quarter before prices rose and temperatures dropped. They're also only the tip of the iceberg, as the numbers are far greater, as these figures do not cover those on legacy prepayment meters. The numbers of which are substantial, almost 2 million in the UK and 300,000 in Scotland. They apply to those who operate before smart meters were brought in. They will substantially increase the numbers already so tragically afflicted. In an energy-rich country, fuel poverty is an obscenity. Given this heartless cruelty in cold winter, will the Minister now, firstly, forthwith end the forced installation of prepayment meters? Secondly, immediately abolish the perverse higher standing charges and tariffs for prepayment meters? And thirdly, as a matter of urgency, bring in a social tariff for the poorest and most vulnerable?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and he raises the issue quite rightly of those who are self-disconnecting and that situation. Well, I think we can be proud of the fact that I think the numbers of people who were physically disconnected from power and heat last year were literally in single figures. So the installation of the prepayment meters has to be an absolute last resort. But what we must, and we can be proud of and must insist that we don't have is a situation where people end up being physically disconnected from an energy supply. All suppliers are required to offer emergency credit when the meter runs out. And it's an important point to highlight, which should give consumers enough time to top up their meter. Traditional meters, which you referred to, have an automatic setting that allows for a set amount of emergency credit to be used after the customer is notified that the topped-up credit has been used. As I've said, Mr Deputy Speaker, we are absolutely committed to having the right regime in place. In 2009, there were issues then around the additional costs of prepayment meters, and at that time Ofgem, then as now, who have the responsibility for supervising this, looked into that, and at that time they brought in a regime to make sure that any costs and charges had to be commensurate with the actual costs of delivery, though to a certain extent that has all been superseded by the energy price cap brought in by this government, which limits the amount that anyone can charge anyone for their energy.
Sir James Dudridge.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.